This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Ngunnawal people. We acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. The Run Bitch Run podcast is dedicated to the women in Australia that are taken from us every year due to intimate partner and gender-based violence. The attitudes of men in this country towards women paints a very ugly picture. Fervent denial of gender inequality, victim blaming, and the instant dismissal of abuse claims when a woman steps forward all contribute to the culture of violence that we bear witness to every single day. This podcast aims to help women spot the red flags before it's too late. When we see the signs, we can break the cycle. Before we dive into today's episode, I do want to acknowledge that some of the topics discussed may be triggering or difficult for some people to hear. If you or someone you know and care about is affected by intimate partner violence or abuse, please consider reaching out for help. You are most definitely not alone. Hey bitches, welcome back. It is episode 5 of the Run Bitch Run podcast with me, Audrey, your host and average everyday lady who currently is going through a bit of a rough time. With surprise, I think maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago, I talked about how I was navigating a breakup in a polyamorous setting. I have had another breakup as a result of my long-term relationship ending. So Audrey is now officially cruising along, and I was originally going to be getting married at the end of the year, which you can assume now not happening. So look, I'll level with you. This is the 4th time I've been engaged, and I think I'm starting to think maybe that now that another one has ended, you know what, maybe that's just not meant for me, and that's totally fine. But I am currently navigating that on top of I did have a family member pass away, and I had to go to Melbourne recently for her funeral. So my beautiful auntie passed away, who I love very much, and I miss her every day. But yeah, unfortunately, there's been a few things compounding this year. Obviously, I work a full-time day job as well, so I've always got that on my plate, and, you know, just trying to put out the best pod I can. So sorry, this is a little bit late. As you can probably tell, I've been a little bit under the pump, but I'm excited to get back into it, honestly. I have a really interesting topic up for discussion today, but I did just want to bring up, I've been on a bit of like a roller coaster of memories lately, and I remember really specifically a time when I guess what I'm meaning to say is that when I go through breakups, I sort of go through and I think about every other breakup that I've gone through, what I've learned from that, how I've coped with it better to try and, continue coping with it better, because realistically, this will probably not be my last breakup ever in my entire life. I think I've talked about previously how I've, navigated that with mashed potato and gravy from KFC. We love that. However, this time I was remembering back to when my last long-term relationship ended, the one that I think I touched on in episode 2 with that really fucked up diagram with my ex that I worked with and his ex-wife and the other guy. So there was that whole thing, and this is the ex that I'm referring to. I remember very vividly being so distraught over, and this was my very abusive ex. I remember being so vividly just sitting there, and I was remembering how when I wanted to break up with him, I couldn't get it through my head that it was appropriate to break up with, quote unquote, a good man. And back then I listened to a podcast called Guys We Fucked. And if you know that one, it's by Corinne Fisher, and the other woman whose name escapes me. I will Google it as I'm currently speaking. It's Christina Hutchinson, I'm pretty sure, is the other woman. Apologies. But I did stop listening to it a little while ago just because there was this one episode that rubbed me one instance that rubbed me the wrong way. And that was when one of the hosts dressed up as sexy Greta Thunberg for Halloween. I think it was Corinne Fisher. It's been scrubbed from the internet, but I don't know. Greta was underage at the time. It made me feel very uncomfortable. Anyways, circling back to why I bring this up, that podcast does have a really fucking good breakup episode. And it was from when I want to say Corinne, it might have been Christina, one of the hosts, they broke up with their long-term partner and they were trying to reconcile with the idea of breaking up with a good man, and how all of the, stories we read on Reddit, all the stories we read on the internet, across the board, generally, women are asking, how do I break up with my abusive partner? But what if the partner's not abusive? And that's sort of what I've been reconciling with since this breakup, because realistically it was amicable. It was amicable, but it was initiated by me. So that was something that I kind of went back and thought about, because when I was breaking up with my super abusive ex, even though he was very abusive, I didn't see it at the time. Not saying that my most recent ex is, obviously, that's not what I'm saying, but my super abusive ex, I would just sit there. I would just remember I'd go out and, I'll be honest, I went to the pub and I'd sit at the pub, and this is really toxic as well, but I'd play the pokies, and I mean like put $10 in, $20 in, like not go overboard. And I would just sit there listening to this podcast on repeat and being like, damn, it's going to be really difficult, but I really should break up with this guy. He's, even though he's a good man, it's just not working. And I would have to convince myself. And in hindsight, that guy was fucked. Like, that guy was a piece of shit. And my most recent ex is definitely not. That's definitely not the situation here. And I'm not going to go much into it out of respect. And it's just nobody's business at this stage. And like I said, it's not super toxic or abusive or anything like that. It's just amicable, and it's just not going to work out for the future. And I would highly recommend, I'm going to link it in the description, but if you're ever sitting there wondering, how the fuck do I break up with a good man? Like, what do I do? Is it the right decision for me? I'm going to link a copy of the podcast I found. I think it's from about 7 years ago, and I couldn't quite find it on their main timeline. So I'm not sure if they've scrubbed it or not, but I still found it really useful. I was reading some Reddit threads from their subreddit, and people still reference it to this day as being a really, really good episode, really raw episode of two women talking about what it's like to break up with a good man. So yes, moving forward to this week's episode, I really want to touch on something that's been affecting me for, I'll be realistic, quite some time. And it is something that did kind of lead up to this breakup happening. And I'll level with you, I'm really fucking lonely. And I have been really fucking lonely. And sometimes it is a lot easier to deal with than others. But this week's topic I wanted to talk about is, I'm coining the term, and women, you might have a little giggle about this, but I'm coining the term the female loneliness epidemic. If you've heard of the male loneliness epidemic, you might see where I'm going with this, but I'm coining the term the female loneliness epidemic. I'll go into it in the second half of the pod, but I'm tying it in with PMS and PMDD today. If you don't know what that is, it's premenstrual syndrome and premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And we'll touch on, obviously, what that is. I do actually have some male listeners, so we'll go into the menstrual cycle as a, brief deep dive, just as like a little re-education. And there might be some women as well, or non-binary people that, the refresher is helpful for as well. So I'll do that. But essentially, I think that it really fucking ties in to why women feel so lonely within their relationships a lot of the time, because of the misunderstanding of what they're going through on a semi-regular to monthly regular basis. So I'm not going to dwell too much on what's been happening with me just because I don't really feel the need. I'm sort of processing it in my own time, trying to go back into counseling, trying to, touch on all of the different support networks that I have and reach out to those, friends, family, work colleagues, everything like that. It's been, honestly, I've been very well supported in this time. So I do feel very grateful. But as we talk about it, I'll give you some more insight into how I'm feeling, especially in relation to feeling a little bit lonely or, a lot lonely. Anyways, let's get into it. I want to strip it way down for like 2 minutes and just go through what a menstrual cycle actually is. So, day 1 of your menstrual cycle is when you get your period. So, if your girlfriend or partner or friend is tracking their period in in a menstrual cycle app, they will basically have their menstrual cycle clock over to day 1 the second that they get their period. So that what their period actually is the uterus shedding its lining. Isn't that beautiful? And also hormone levels like estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest. So people tend to feel pretty tired, crampy, like brain foggy, or just meh. It's when you're bleeding and you tend to be quite bloated, but symptomatically, we'll go into that in a second. So that lasts anywhere from, maybe 5 to 7 days on average. And then from the point of you getting your period up to day 13 is what's called your follicular phase. And that's when you're fucking on top of the world and your brain is sending out the FSH, which I didn't know this until I was researching it, but that is the follicle stimulating hormone. So your ovaries start preparing the eggs. Usually one dominant egg, or always one dominant egg, will mature, and estrogen begins to rise as well. So that's boosting your mood and your energy, and the uterine lining that you've just shed for the first 5 or 7 days is starting to basically rebuild. So you're getting a lot of that like post period clarity, and you start to feel a bit more like yourself. You might be a little bit more horny, and then you go into ovulation, which is generally around day 14, and that's when you are getting a surge of the luteinizing hormone. I pronounce things so well. And that causes that mature egg to be released, and essentially your estrogen peaks, and that is when you are the most fertile. So the most often you will get pregnant in your ovulating time. You're generally feeling very horny because biologically you want to have a baby. That's kind of what what your body's pushing you towards. You're feeling very glowy, you're feeling very social, you're feeling very main character energy. And then, that's when you start to, just do things like random cleaning at 2 a.m. If you're like me, you'll just get up and just do things. Now, the thing that we're focusing on today is when you get past day 14 and you get into day 15 through to generally about day 28. Some people have longer menstrual cycles and they can go up to, sometimes mine have lasted up to like 34 days when I was a teenager. Now, thankfully, they are quite regular around the 26 to 28 days. But, depending on mood, things like that, it can be a bit lower or longer. But when you get past your ovulating phase and into the second half of your menstrual cycle, then you are in the luteal phase. And my girlies, my non-binary people, my fucking Anybody that gets a period, you would understand that the, if you're not taking hormones that prevent this from happening, but when you're in your luteal phase, you feel like shit. It is just all of the mood swings, all of the cravings, all of the crying at TikTok videos, your progesterone, I cannot fucking pronounce that. Progesterone starts to rise, in preparation for pregnancy, if that was to happen. And if you don't get pregnant, then your hormone levels drop. And this is when the symptoms that we will talk about in 2 seconds start to get a lot more present. So people start to get, a bit more full of rage, a little bit more sad, a little bit dissociative. And honestly, for some women and some people, it fucking makes you feel like a completely different person. So this is the full list of symptoms that you can get. Obviously not entirely full. There are some people that obviously would sit outside of this with other different symptoms, but the core symptoms are tension and anxiety, depressed mood, crying spells, mood swings and irritability or anger, appetite changes and food cravings, trouble falling asleep / insomnia, social withdrawal, poor concentration, change in libido, joint or muscle pain, headache, fatigue, weight gain related to fluid retention, abdominal bloating, breast tenderness, acne flare-ups, constipation or diarrhea, and alcohol intolerance. So that is more or less a comprehensive list of all the symptoms that a regular person with a period goes through in the luteal phase of their menstrual cycle every month. It's very stressful to deal with. Now there is, unfortunately, about 20% globally of people of reproductive age, like women of reproductive age, that's what the stat says, but you know what I mean, have PMS that disrupts their everyday lives. So PMS stands for premenstrual syndrome, and that is the symptoms I've just read out to you, having those, one or two or a number of them, is not normal, right? Most people with periods will go through those symptoms at some point in their life. But globally, about 20% of women of reproductive age have PMS that disrupts their everyday lives. So PMS is the next step up from regular symptoms. It's when it starts to get a bit more uncontrollable. And when it takes another step further, it becomes premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which does affect actually 5 to 8% of women who are of reproductive age. Most women will just never get diagnosed for either PMS or PMDD. People just think that it's the way it's supposed to be. And I personally didn't notice that it was really affecting me until a few months ago. When I realized that I have changed over from my antidepressants. I used to be on Lexapro and now I'm on fluoxetine, which I think is Prozac. That's, what is supposed to help these symptoms and my depression and my anxiety. And as I am normally for like 2-3 weeks out of the month, I'm really level-headed. I'm really calm. I'm really considered, logical. But then it's almost like I might need to take like double the dosage when I'm fucking menstruating in the lead up to and in my luteal phase, because I just lose complete control of my emotions. Like I go through these really high spikes of mood swings. I can't make sense of my relationships with people, and that can be really devastating when I'm trying to communicate and I can't fucking communicate properly because my brain is not working. And it doesn't help the loneliness because I feel so isolated and alone and like nobody understands me. And on top of that, I've got sore tits and I've got fucking bloating. Like I get so fucking bloated, and I'm trying to drink water so that it helps me sleep better and it helps me with my acne and everything. But then that contributes to the bloating. And so there's so many things that I feel like I'm in like this never ending cycle, and it's so hard to pull myself out of because it's like 1 to 2 weeks where I have to hold on to all of my existing responsibilities. And it's just so much pressure to be a perfectly normal fucking operating member of society and human being when it feels like my body and my mind and sometimes my heart is like working actively against me. And like I said, I'm on the prescription medication that they would put me on anyway if I went to the doctor and talked to them about it. But I'm at the point where I don't have a fucking GP. Like I want a woman GP, preferably one that both bills, you know what I'm saying, in this fucking cost of living crisis, that takes me seriously, listens to me, understands where I'm coming from. I get so jealous when I hear people talk about the relationships that they have with their doctors. And I'm like, fuck, I wish I had one like that. But it's been a really long time since I've had a female doctor that, you know, is available, even not fucking fully booked out, and that has time for me. So if anyone has any recommendations in Canberra, please let me know. But yeah, those 2 weeks, it just makes me feel like I'm the queen of self-sabotage, and I'm over it. I'm at the point where I'm over it. And I remember a time when I was in my early 20s, like 2021, not the year, but my age, and I got an IUD. I got the Marina IUD, and I'm at the point again where I've made the appointment because I had 6 or 7 years without a period, 6 or 7 years without ovulating, and I think I'm going to be honestly on top of the world when I can get on top of this, because it is debilitating. I'm not sure if I have PMS. I'm not sure if it's PMDD, but it just changes me so fundamentally during that week or 2 weeks. And it would be so hard for a partner, like a man even specifically, that doesn't understand what I'm going through, to really be able to grasp what I'm going through and to know what kind of help to offer. And I can't always be, you know, I'm a good communicator, but I don't always know what I need. And so it must be really hard from people that try to date me to be able to understand what I need. And especially because it's constantly changing due to mood swings, that's not pleasant to be around. I don't want to be that person. So yeah, I have booked in at the end of August after my 29th birthday. I'm getting my IUD put back in, and it's probably going to be another couple of months after that for shit to really start to level out. But I'm excited. I feel like it's the beginning of, you know, a new chapter for me. I'm almost 30. I'm going to be going into my 30s in a very similar way as I went into my 20s, you know, ending a long-term relationship and finding myself. And even though this time I don't plan to move to a new city, I am just going to try and rediscover what I fell in love with. You know, I love Canberra, but I'm going to rediscover Canberra, I think, and I'm going to rediscover what I loved about it, what I do love about it, because I love living here. I just want to feel more. I just feel like I'm ready for the next phase of my life, and I don't think I want to take these fucking PMDD and PMS symptoms into it with me. They don't serve me. I know a way to help it and help alleviate those symptoms, and for now I just have to ride with the punches until I can get my ID put in. But yeah, it's fucked. And if you're a man listening to this, just try and comprehend how fucked it can be, as much as you can. It's easier said than done, I'm fully aware. The last thing I want to talk about today is a bit of a play on words. It's just I always read about it, and I just want to put it into perspective with what we've talked about today. So I always hear about the male loneliness epidemic, and I don't actually think this exists. Not because I don't think that men are lonely. I do. But I think that everyone's lonely. I think COVID really fucked with people. I think that the age of social media really fucks with people. I think everything that's being done by various governments across the world really fucks with people. So I really do think that the male loneliness epidemic doesn't exist. But for the purpose of this discussion, it does exist, and I'm going to be coining the term the female loneliness epidemic. So my argument for why men are not disproportionately affected and why we are all proportionally affected is that men are held back by the patriarchy, okay? The patriarchy being the social system we exist in currently, where men hold the primary power and authority in most, if not all, facets of everything. Men suffer from the need to be manly, to not show emotion, to not seek help, to not go to counselling because their friends will think that they're weak, you know? And I think those really are the core reasons for the male loneliness epidemic. There are incels that will say it's women's fault, but I refuse to listen to them because they contribute nothing to society. But I do feel bad for men that unfortunately suffer under patriarchy. We all suffer under patriarchy. And unfortunately, the men that are suffering, they're suffering by a system set up for men by men. So it's a bit shit. Women, on the other hand, have not only the burden of living under patriarchy, but also the aforementioned biological realities that are, most often completely misunderstood or ignored or dismissed. So my definition for the female loneliness epidemic is as follows. A modern social phenomenon in which women are increasingly isolated, not by lack of people, but by the lack of understanding, care, and emotional presence from often male partners, systems, and society. At its core, the female loneliness epidemic is the experience of managing mental health, pain, and hormonal cycles on your own, being dismissed, mocked, or ignored when symptoms emerge, watching partners make no effort to learn or empathize, very common, and living in a world where you're being crazy is more common than how can I help? Hope you liked that. And most importantly, okay, I want to stress, this is not just about feeling a bit off, okay? It's about people being physically present in relationships and friendships and workplaces while also being, emotionally invisible, as some would say. So I feel like when I complain about PMDD or PMS symptoms, things that really affect me, really affect my day-to-day, it almost feels like I'm validating men by doing that. You know what I mean, ladies? Like, it feels like I am validating the male perception of women as being too emotional and basically too emotional and on the rags, as they say. I feel like I'm validating that male opinion, like that kind of trope. And we saw with the State of the Women study, I think from 2023, that Katie Gallagher did, the State of the Women report card, 30% of young men in Australia don't actually believe that gender inequality exists. I'm not sure if that's due to uneducation or if they just choose to be fucking ignorant, but regardless, it doesn't give me much hope. And so I think women don't fucking talk about this shit because it validates the male perception that we are emotional and we can't cope. Well, actually we can cope, and there are women with PMS and PMDD that definitely are fighting in the fucking military and working in the mines. And so I'm not saying that we can't do these things and that we can't do these things while we have this kind of pain. It doesn't render all women completely fucking weak. What I'm saying is there needs to be more of a level of understanding in the way that we approach women during this time, the way that we handle, the domestic labor in the house. You should, as a man, if your woman is unwell, take on that role. That should be something you do as a partner. That should be an equal sort of relationship, if that's the relationship you have, right? But it's not. Like, that's just not the world we live in, unfortunately, still. And it's only getting worse. It's only getting way more dramatic with people like Audrey Taylor and whatever the fuck else is new. I don't know. I'm a bit chronically online, so I look at people like Kanye West and Sneeko and people that are just horribly toxic and gross and just have absolutely no concept of what it means to be an ally to women and treat their partners in a way that is beneficial for everyone. We all have to live under patriarchy, but, we can do things to alleviate the negative effects, I guess you could say. And one of those is being fucking educated on what your woman is going through, what your partner is dealing with every month. Because for most people that get periods, this is every month. Every month we experience to some degree these symptoms, and it makes us feel really fucking lonely and really not heard when you're not listening. Active listening. It's always at the core. You've always got to be actively listening and actively willing to progress and be a better partner. And ultimately that's what we're looking for. And, ladies, if your partner is not offering you that right now, maybe you need to listen to a few of my other episodes. Just saying. Okay, so that's pretty much it from me. I honestly really am so appreciative of everyone giving me such really lovely feedback. It's been so great, and please keep the feedback coming. If you have time to rate the pod, that'd be also really awesome, but no pressure. Just if you have a second to rate it on any platform that you listen to, it does help. One final thing I wanted to talk about is something I did this week to, it's one thing when you go through a breakup, sometimes you dye your hair and sometimes you bleach it. I didn't do either of those things yet. What I have done, though, is get an STI test done this week. And I wanted to point out what was cool about it. I'm a busy girl. So I love going to work and then going straight the fuck home every day because I'm a busy girl. So I hate having to book in a fucking doctor's appointment for one thing, unless it's like actively impairing me, in which case, of course, I'll go to the doctor. But I hate having to go to the doctor for something that is generally a free service in other places, especially if I can't get a bulk billed appointment. This week, I got an STI test done through this app called Sister, so SISTR. I'm going to do a slide on Instagram about it. I'm also going to link it in the description, because it's really fucking cool. So you basically fill out an online form. They ask you like basic questions, and then you download the app if you would like to. You don't have to, but I chose to. I think it's probably more so directed at sex workers, and I'll go into a bit why. But anyone of any gender can use it. You can kind of tell by the marketing, it's designed more for women, targeted more at women, but they do specify any gender can use it. And the service that they provide is a telehealth appointment to basically go through what you've written in your online form that you initially submit. And then once they've clarified that you're on Medicare, you get a free STI check. So they send you the PDF pathology request form thing. And I just wanted to get the standard screen. So I did the blood and the urine. You can, and if you don't like to do the urine, you can do the vaginal swab, which we love that, don't we, girls? We love swabbing our vag. But I went with the pee just because it was faster. So I went in and I got my blood test done. Fun fact, went into shock midway, forgot to eat beforehand. Anyway, I got my results back and they came back within 2 days. I got them back on a Saturday, which shout out to the pathologist working on the weekend. You don't get paid enough, but they went straight to my app. And so if I was obviously clean, if I had anything pop up, they would send me a message saying one of our doctors just wants to have a chat with you. And then that's how you know that there was potentially something that's come up and you can go to them for treatment options and things like that as well. They do a few different tests. They do like prenatal or something I saw on there, like pregnancy test kind of vibe. And yeah, I'm on Medicare, so thankfully it was all free. And you get your results in your app. So if you are a sex worker or somebody that has sexual contact a lot for their work, that is a really easy way to show the people that you're interacting with that you're clean. And I just thought it was really great. Not that I intend to go gallivanting around having like unprotected sex with everyone, but it is really, in saying that, it's my choice and I'm allowed to do what I like. But it is good to know. It's just one of those things that's good to know coming out of a breakup, clean bill of health, fresh slate, that type of thing. And with that, I will leave you. That has been episode 5 of the Run Bitch Run podcast. Again, thank you so much for being with me today. I hope that this was in some way insightful for you, enlightening, educational, funny little ditty for your day. I hope you've had a really great weekend, and I will see you guys in episode 6. Bye.